My name is Sheila Carrington. I'm 38 years old. And this is the story of how I was betrayed on the night that was supposed to celebrate me, and how I used that very moment to burn down everything they thought they built behind my back. Turning 38 didn't feel like anything special. I wasn't chasing fireworks or flashy gifts. A quiet dinner with the people I loved was more than enough. That's why when my best friend Lauren told me she was planning a small gathering at Maison Fleur, a charming French restaurant nestled between vintage bookstores and art galleries in downtown Portland, I didn't question it. She always had good taste. Always knew what I liked. When I walked in that night, soft violin music played in the background, warm lights danced across champagne glasses, and familiar faces greeted me with hugs and laughter. My heart swelled with gratitude. Lauren had really outdone herself. She even wore the green silk dress I told her looked like it was made for her just a few weeks ago while we were shopping. And then there was Ethan. My husband of 7 years. Tall, confident, wearing the navy suit I got him last Christmas, the one that made him look like a walking Wall Street article. He leaned down, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Tonight is all yours, love." I smiled. Even after our rough patches, the long hours, the quiet dinners, the distant looks, I still believed in us. I still believed in him. Until he raised his glass. I stood beside him, holding a crystal flute of Prosecco, expecting another one of his well-practiced birthday toasts. Something poetic. Something gentle. Something like, "Sheila is the anchor of my world," or "This woman gave me more than I ever deserved." But his voice shifted. There was no softness. Just control. Measured words. Calculated breath. "Before we all raise a glass to Sheila," he said, "there's something I want to share." I glanced at him, confused. That's when his eyes left mine and landed on Lauren. She stepped forward slowly. The green silk caught the light just enough to look like she'd been waiting for a stage. For applause. But what she said didn't deserve any. "We didn't want things to happen this way," Lauren said gently, "but we're in love. And we want to live honestly, with our feelings." There was no clinking of glasses. No music. Just the sound of my world shattering in real time. My grip on the glass tightened. My fingers went numb. The restaurant fell into a hush, whispers starting to ripple across the room like a virus. My eyes stayed locked on Ethan. I needed him to say it wasn't real. That this was a bad joke. But he didn't. He just looked at me like someone offering pity to a woman too stupid to see the truth. I unclasped the sapphire bracelet on my wrist, our 5th anniversary gift, and placed it beside the chocolate mousse cake Lauren had chosen for me, because it always made me cry with joy. "Not tonight. You picked my favorite place, my birthday, and the woman I once called a sister," I said calmly. "I'll give you credit. You still know how to stage a scene." Lauren opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. "No. You don't get to explain. You wore the dress I suggested, picked the place I loved, and invited the people I trusted most to witness your betrayal. I hope it was worth it." Ethan's smirk faltered. "And you?" I turned to him. "This is how you end a marriage? With a toast?" I walked out. Not a single tear fell. Not in front of them. But just as I reached the door, a young server, barely 20, rushed up to me, nervous. "Miss Sheila. I probably shouldn't say this, but they've been coming here together. 4 months. Always said it was for work." I looked at her, my voice steady. "Thank you. You just gave me the most honest thing I've heard all night." Outside, Portland's night air was damp, the sidewalks glistening with recent rain. I stood in silence, gripping my purse. The noise of the city moved around me, but I was no longer a part of it. The show was over. But my story had just begun. I didn't disappear with drama. No screaming on social media, No, you'll regret this farewell posts, no begging for anyone to pick a side. That wasn't my style. I disappeared in precision, quiet, surgical, and absolute. 3 days after the party, I filed for emergency leave from my firm, citing personal matters. Martin and Rox had always been accommodating, but the look in my supervisor's eyes told me she already knew. Word had spread, maybe not the full betrayal, but enough to create a fog of pity and whispers in every hallway. I didn't want pity. I wanted distance. I moved out of the house Ethan and I had lived in for 6 years. I left everything behind: furniture, art, linens, even my favorite mint green teapot. There was nothing left in that house that didn't feel tainted. I packed 2 suitcases, rented a 500-square-foot apartment in the Alberta Arts District under the name Maya Callahan, my mother's maiden name, and turned off my phone. The only sound in my apartment those first few nights was the clicking of my laptop keyboard. Because that's when the real work began. I didn't cry. Not yet. The pain hadn't caught up to the logic. My mind was on fire, running through timelines, receipts, phone records, passwords. Ethan never changed because he assumed I was too kind to look. Kindness is not blindness. He had simply mistaken my silence for submission. Every evening, I sat at the small wooden desk I dragged from the sidewalk on moving day, whiteboard beside me, red markers in hand. I drew connection lines between real estate documents, bank accounts, and calendar entries. You see, Ethan and Lauren hadn't just broken my heart, they had broken laws. There was a property transfer dated 3 months before the party. A small investment firm Ethan had shares in, quietly passed under the name Callahan Estates LLC. My mother's last name. My name. And yet I had never signed a single piece of it. That's when my pulse shifted from pain to fury. They didn't just want to be together, they were laundering the exit. Making sure the money and business leverage stayed with them before I even knew the divorce papers were coming. But I wasn't defenseless. I still had every login Ethan ever shared, every digital footprint he left in our home, every shared Dropbox folder. He was careless with the same arrogance that made him believe I'd never fight back. One night, while sifting through his synced iCloud files, I found an email chain between him and Lauren titled Phase 2. The thread was encrypted, but Ethan, idiotically sentimental, had used my birthday as the password. Inside was a 3-month projection document outlining their plans after the separation, as they called it. Ethan would retain client leads from his private consulting firm. Lauren would continue growing her real estate brand under L&K Collective. Together, they'd move Ethan's dormant shares into an LLC under Lauren's name to avoid marital property claims. They had planned everything. Down to the day they'd stage the confession at Maison Fleur. My birthday was not an accident, it was part of the script. I stared at the screen for a long time that night. The taste in my mouth turned metallic. I closed the laptop and looked out at the empty city skyline. They thought I wouldn't seek revenge. They were wrong. The next morning, I texted exactly one person, Quincy Moss, an investigative journalist who once took down a city councilman using evidence I quietly provided through a legal loophole. I'd helped him before. Now, I needed a favor returned. I have something bigger than the 2021 rail fund scandal, I typed. Meet me. No bylines. Just the truth. He responded in 5 minutes. Name the time. The city's been too quiet anyway. Next, I called an old college friend working for the Oregon State Auditor's office. I asked for coffee. She didn't even hesitate. If you're calling, it means something's on fire. That afternoon, I walked into a cozy cafe dressed in gray slacks and a high-neck sweater. I ordered jasmine tea. Across from me, Quincy watched silently as I pulled out a flash drive. This has encrypted communications, real estate fraud, shell company transfers, and IRS implications, I said. Some of it is gray area. But a lot of it is illegal. He whistled low. All of it traceable? Every line of it, I said. Every penny. We didn't talk much after that. There was no need. He was already drafting the outline in his head. When I returned to my apartment that evening, it was raining, thin, bitter streaks tapping against the glass. I sat back at my desk and looked at the whiteboard. I added one more red line. This one ran from Ethan's initials to Lauren's LinkedIn profile. Then I drew a circle around it. Let them think I was grieving. Let them believe I was licking wounds and whispering sad songs into wine bottles. Because by the time they suspected I was building something, it would already be too late. I wasn't planning to destroy them overnight. People like Ethan and Lauren don't collapse from a single blow. They've trained their whole lives to deflect blame, to spin narratives, to look like the victims even while sinking the knife into someone else's back. So I chose a different method: erosion. Silent. Subtle. Relentless. It started with 2 identities. I created 2 burner email accounts, each one carefully crafted with matching LinkedIn profiles, website footers, and even voicemail recordings. One was Marissa Cole, an investor from Seattle with an interest in high-growth real estate markets. The other was Helen Kim, a legal compliance analyst representing a private equity fund. Both women were fictional. Both women were dangerous in the right inbox. From Marissa's account, I began reaching out to former partners and associates of Ethan, people who had worked with him before his rebrand into a visionary consultant for restructuring small business portfolios. My emails were curious, polite, and always ended with a question. Did you happen to review the disclosures before signing the advisory contract? Some of the numbers seem inconsistent across properties. I never made accusations. I planted seeds. From Helen's account, I contacted several of Lauren's old clients, mostly small business owners and private investors who had trusted LNK Collective to manage their real estate portfolios. I provided redacted versions of fake audit findings, referencing valuation discrepancies and contract anomalies. The language was vague enough to seem like a warning, but sharp enough to cause alarm. Within 3 weeks, the first cracks appeared. An investor pulled out of a pending land acquisition Ethan had been brokering. A boutique bakery owner in the Pearl District filed a complaint with the Oregon Real Estate Board about a conflict of interest in Lauren's asset valuation report. And then there were the whispers, slow, crawling rumors that began circulating among Portland's mid-tier investment firms. Rumors like, "I heard Ethan's numbers don't add up lately." Or, "Did you know Lauren's last 3 deals were ghost clients propping up her valuation reports?" I knew. Because I invented the rumors. With receipts to back them up. Meanwhile, I was meeting quietly with Quincy, supplying documents in person, slipping them into a plain brown folder labeled contract notes. We met at busier cafes now, deliberately placing ourselves among people. Not because we were afraid, but because visibility meant protection. Anyone watching would think we were just colleagues grabbing coffee. What they wouldn't know is that we were building a case so airtight, not even Ethan's silver tongue could slip through it. I never once checked Ethan or Lauren's social media. I didn't need to. My goal wasn't to watch them squirm in real time, it was to set in motion consequences they wouldn't even see coming. But one day, I got a message from a blocked number. It was a photo. Lauren, sitting on a rooftop terrace with a man I didn't recognize. Champagne in one hand, the caption read, "Living freely, finally." I stared at the image. Not because it hurt, but because she looked exactly like the woman I used to protect. The one who sat next to me at my mother's funeral, who once helped me repaint the nursery when we thought we'd start a family. That woman was long gone. Replaced by someone who believed deception was a currency. I deleted the photo. That night, Quincy sent me a draft. Title, "Behind the Glass, the Real Estate Power Couple Hiding in Plain Sight." It was subtle. Nothing explosive. Just enough to make readers raise their eyebrows. It didn't accuse Ethan and Lauren outright, but it questioned the ethics of their transactions, listed anonymous insider tips, and quoted several professionals who admitted there were definitely some red flags. I didn't tell anyone I had anything to do with it. Not even my coworkers at Martin and Rocks, who were already treating me like porcelain. I simply walked into the office the next day in a navy dress, hair tied back, and reviewed client contracts like nothing had changed. But the industry changed. Almost overnight. The day after the article dropped, I got a message from a contact at the Oregon Securities Commission. FYI, your guy Ethan might be under preliminary investigation. Heard it from someone in audit. I didn't respond. 2 days later, Lauren's name was quietly removed from the speakers list at the Pacific Northwest Women's Real Estate Summit. No explanation. Just a quiet delete, like she'd never been booked. I printed that update and pinned it beside my whiteboard. Red ink underlined her name this time. Sheila Carrington was no longer grieving. She was rebuilding, brick by brick, ruin by ruin. Ethan used to say, "You don't win wars with explosions. You win them by cutting off supplies." I remembered that line as I read the headline on Monday morning, sipping coffee from the quiet cafe beneath my building. Securities Commission opens inquiry into Pine Investment Group, ethics questions raised. There was no mention of Ethan's name. Not yet. But anyone familiar with Pine knew exactly who they were talking about. Ethan Brooks was the shadow director of that group, and the moment financial regulators started sniffing around, it was only a matter of time before someone followed the trail back to him. I had laid the path brick by brick. That same afternoon, Lauren's brokerage, L&K Collective, received a formal complaint from 2 of her former clients. One, a retired real estate developer, claimed Lauren had sold him on a turnkey rental property that turned out to be mid-renovation and missing key permits. The other was a small cafe owner who discovered she had signed a lease with a clause stating that the building owner could raise rent by 80% with 30 days' notice, a clause she said was never disclosed. Both complaints came with attached documentation. Both cases were real. I had found them through Helen Kim's outreach campaign and simply reminded them where to send the paperwork. No force. No threats. Just a quiet nudge toward justice. Within 72 hours, CivicLine, the city's most ruthless digital watchdog, picked up the scent. Quincy sent me the link. When Empires Rot from Within, a look inside Portland's real estate darling. The article was brutal. It exposed falsified asset values, misleading partnership language, and what it called a pattern of transactional vanity, a polite way of saying Lauren had used buzzwords and big promises to hide a crumbling foundation. No names were redacted. Photos included Lauren shaking hands with city planners. Her carefully curated public image cracked like sugar glass. But that wasn't the end. Quincy had saved the sharpest blade for last. He published an audio file, blurred voices at first, then clearer, unmistakable, Ethan, laughing with a developer. Just cut the material costs on the first phase. By the time they notice, we're already on to phase 2. Customers never check insulation ratings anyway. The laughter that followed was Ethan's signature one, tight and smug, the same laugh he gave when someone complimented his wine cellar or asked about our non-existent honeymoon in Paris. The internet doesn't forget. That audio file went viral. Legal forums shared it. A podcast dissected it. Real estate watchdogs compiled it into a case study. And suddenly, Ethan's entire legacy, one he'd spent a decade constructing, was reduced to a 3-minute clip and a headline that read, "Portland's poster boy for progress?" Or just another smooth talker. Back at the law firm, no one dared to ask if I was okay. They didn't know whether to treat me like a hero or a ghost. I didn't offer either. But when I passed the conference room, I saw 2 associates whispering over the CivicLine article, one of them glancing my way. I didn't break stride. I didn't need credit. That Friday, a private message arrived from a contact at the Preston Foundation, a respected philanthropic group that had partnered with Lauren's Empower Portland initiative for years. The message was brief: funds suspended. Only 23% traceable. Rest under audit. Public statement pending. I leaned back in my chair. That initiative had been Lauren's pride, her calling card, the source of every panel invitation and magazine feature. It had painted her as a community-minded, socially conscious entrepreneur. Now, it was radioactive. The following week, 2 lawsuits hit L&K Collective. Both clients, the ones I had quietly empowered, filed civil suits for misrepresentation, negligence, and financial damages totaling nearly $800,000. Lauren tried to spin it, saying it was an internal compliance error and that she'd personally ensure resolution. But no one believed her anymore. Clients left. Investors backed out. Even her assistant quit, sending in a resignation letter that leaked online. I believed in the mission. Until I saw how quickly loyalty was replaced with lies. It wasn't just a fall from grace. It was free fall. Ethan's world wasn't faring any better. By the end of the second week of fallout, the Bar Ethics Committee had summoned him for a formal review. Grant & Doyle, the prestigious firm where he had built his reputation, issued a carefully worded press release. Pending internal investigation, Ethan Brooks is on administrative leave. Translation: he was done. His name, once spoken in city council meetings and investor briefings, now drew side eyes and quiet chuckles. An article in a legal journal referred to him as an example of what happens when unchecked charm meets unchecked ambition. I pinned that one on the board, too. Then came the moment I hadn't anticipated, but welcomed all the same. A video. Not just any video. Someone, actually, 3 someones, had filmed Ethan and Lauren arguing in Pioneer Courthouse Square during a sudden downpour. The angles were perfect. Lauren in heels and a rain-soaked dress, Ethan in his unbuttoned shirt, shouting. "You said you had a plan," he yelled. "You told me everything would be protected." Lauren jabbed a finger into his chest. "If you hadn't panicked like a coward, we wouldn't be in this mess. I lost everything because of you." The video exploded. Twitter threads. Reddit drama. TikTok commentary. Even YouTube clips with reaction breakdowns. One user titled it, "When Greed Backfires, Watch Portland's Power Couple Implode in Real Time." It was cinematic. Tragic. Perfect. And yet, I didn't smile. Not because it didn't satisfy me, it did. But because I understood now that their collapse wasn't just about what they did to me. It was about the way they moved through life, believing the world owed them something simply because they were clever enough to manipulate it. And I had stopped them. Not with rage. Not with vengeance. But with truth. The real kind, the kind with timestamps, with contracts, with recordings. The kind you can't erase, no matter how expensive your lawyer or how polished your apology video. They were unraveling. Publicly. Painfully. Permanently. And the woman they once called too kind to fight back was the one pulling the strings from a quiet apartment in a forgotten corner of the city. I thought I had seen the worst of them. That the betrayals were complete and the fallout was all that remained. But in war, as in heartbreak, there is always one more trap, one final cut you didn't see coming. It came in the form of a letter. A crisp, cream-colored envelope tucked inside my apartment mailbox, no return address. I opened it standing in the hall, grocery bag hanging from my wrist. The paper was thick. Embossed. Expensive. Inside was a single folded sheet and a typed message. "Dear Sheila. If you think this ends with bad headlines, you haven't learned anything at all. We made mistakes, yes. But don't forget, you profited from all of it, too. Let's not push this any further. Yours, L." I stared at it for a long time. Not from fear. From disbelief. Even now, with their reputations crumbling, Lauren thought she still had the high ground. That the woman they'd humiliated could be intimidated by a half-hearted threat wrapped in velvet. No signature, but I knew the handwriting. Lauren's idea of control always came dressed in pretty packaging. She'd miscalculated. Again. I went back inside, slipped the letter into a plastic evidence sleeve, and added it to the growing folder marked Phase 3. Then I sat at my desk and opened a document I'd been working on for weeks, the final step in the takedown, a full report prepared for a whistleblower submission to the Oregon Department of Financial Regulation. It contained everything. Timeline. Communications. Asset trails. Falsified disclosures. The manipulation of Callahan Estates, yes, my family name, to funnel funds into a side entity Ethan and Lauren created without my knowledge or consent. There were even logs proving they used that shell company to co-sign on an international wire transfer right before my birthday. That wasn't just unethical. It was criminal. The submission portal was secure. Anonymous. I reviewed the report 3 times, then hit upload. The confirmation screen blinked once. It was done. But the day had more in store. That evening, while sipping tea at the window, my intercom buzzed. A name appeared on the screen, Nancy McKay. Lauren's mother. I hadn't seen her in years. She used to call me the grounded one and once cried on my shoulder when Lauren broke off her engagement to a perfectly kind pharmacist in Seattle. I buzzed her up. She entered like someone carrying a storm inside her. Her face was sharp with grief, but not sadness. Shame. Sheila, she said, her voice trembling, I need to talk. God, I didn't know about any of it. I led her to the couch. She didn't sit right away. She stood there, eyes darting around my apartment like she was afraid it might vanish. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. It was Lauren's old journal. I recognized the floral design immediately, one she used to keep in college, back when we were both too busy chasing dreams to chase men. I found this tucked in a box in her old bedroom, Nancy said. I thought maybe it'd help me understand how she became this. I opened it slowly. Page after page of entries, some from years ago, others more recent. One section stopped me cold. I don't love Ethan. But he's power. And Sheila doesn't see it. She thinks loyalty protects her. I think it makes her weak. If I play this right, I can have what she has, only bigger. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I said nothing. Nancy sat down, finally, hands shaking. She used to be my brightest light. But now she walks like someone who's learned to survive by dimming everyone else. I nodded. She thinks that's winning. Nancy exhaled, tears spilling now. They're destroying everything they touch. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For what she did. For not seeing it sooner. And that's when I realized, revenge isn't always about seeing your enemies fall. Sometimes it's watching the people who used to defend them finally admit the truth. I hugged Nancy at the door. Not for her, but for the girl I once knew. The one who used to braid my hair during sleepovers. The one who lost herself chasing an illusion. And just when I thought the night couldn't stretch any further, I received another message, this one from David Murphy. He had once worked with me at Grant and Doyle. We hadn't spoken since the party, but he'd quietly liked a few articles I was anonymously credited in. His message was simple. We're launching a support program for small businesses hit by unfair legal terms. I know what happened. I didn't say anything before, and I regret that. But if you want to be part of something better, something clean, we need someone like you. I sat with that message for a long time. My whole life had been about precision, about law, about rules. And yet here I was, having broken every rule to dismantle 2 people who thought they were untouchable. But David wasn't offering redemption. He was offering direction. I wrote back. Yes. I'll help. But I don't want titles. Just results. he replied. Results are all we need. Welcome aboard. And just like that, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a year. Purpose. Not rage. Not revenge. But something steady. Grounded. Real. I started on Monday. No announcement, no fanfare, no dramatic post declaring some reinvention. Just a quiet walk into an old brick building on East Burnside, up to the 9th floor, where the walls still smelled faintly of fresh paint and coffee. The office of the new support program for small businesses wasn't glamorous as 3 desks, 2 filing cabinets, and a corkboard full of post-it notes color-coded by crisis. But it was mine. And it was real. David greeted me with a small nod and handed me my first case file. Claire Jennings. Single mother. Owner of a candle and essential oils shop in the Northeast Quadrant. Nearly bankrupt after COVID, and now trapped in a lease agreement with abusive terms that were bleeding her business dry. I spent the afternoon reviewing the paperwork in silence. Claire had been paying triple the regional rate for her square footage, was being charged $400 per month for outdoor beautification services that never materialized, and had unknowingly signed away her rights to early termination. But one thing caught my eye. The owner of the building? L. McKay Properties. Lauren. The name didn't shake me. It sharpened me. I scheduled a visit that same week. Claire met me at her shop, a narrow space tucked between a thrift store and a tattoo parlor. It smelled of lavender and citrus, but her face was tight with exhaustion. I don't think I can fight this, she said, folding her arms tightly. They have lawyers. I have peppermint wax melts. I smiled softly. You have me. That's enough. We went over every page. I rewrote her lease appeal, cross-checked zoning violations, and prepared her grant applications to 2 post-pandemic recovery programs. It took 2 weeks. 2 sleepless, relentless weeks of digging, documenting, emailing, and demanding. Then on a gray Tuesday morning, I walked with Claire into a mediation meeting. Lauren wasn't there. She sent a junior rep who tried to bluff his way through an opening offer. I handed over a 5-page complaint draft addressed to the City Council's Small Business Committee, detailing unethical lease structuring, discriminatory clauses, and tenant abuse patterns, complete with screenshots of Lauren's internal communications I had saved months ago. He didn't even make it to the 2nd page. 2 hours later, Claire had a revised lease with fair terms, backdated credits for beautification, and a 3-month rent deferment. We walked out into the rain. Claire turned to me, eyes glassy. No one's ever fought for me like that before, she said. I feel like I just got my life back. I wanted to say something profound. Something poetic. Instead, I just whispered, then let's build it better. I returned to my apartment that night, tossed my soaked coat on the back of a chair, and sat at the little writing desk I'd bought from a secondhand store. I lit a candle, one Claire had given me before I left, and stared out the window at the city. For the first time in months, I didn't feel haunted. The next morning, I emailed David. If there are others like Claire, send them. Especially the ones being crushed by vague clauses or silenced by big names. I'm ready. His response came minutes later. You're not just ready. You're necessary. That spring, I sold the Pearl District penthouse. The real estate agent blinked when I accepted an offer 12% below market value. You sure? She asked. You could easily get more. I don't need more, I said simply. I just need peace. I moved into a smaller place, 5th floor of a red brick walk-up near Laurelhurst Park. 1 bedroom, a kitchen that needed work, and a balcony that looked out over swaying maple trees. I chose the linen curtains myself. Bought a second-hand bookshelf. And I framed 1 photo for the wall. Not of me. Of my whiteboard, every red arrow, every name, every note that had once powered my mission. I framed it as a reminder, not of revenge, but of clarity. You can survive betrayal. But clarity, that's what turns survival into purpose. One Saturday, David invited me to a networking event. He introduced me to a media studies professor from Portland State, Alexander Brooks. I remembered his name. He'd been quoted in one of Quincy's articles, offering psychological analysis of public downfall narratives. We ended up talking for 2 hours over wine and bitter chocolate. I used to tell my students, he said with a soft smile, when a woman chooses silence, be careful. But after reading your work, I changed it to, when a woman chooses action, no words are needed. Alexander never asked about Ethan. Or Lauren. Or the headlines. He just listened. And laughed at my dry jokes. And walked me home without pushing anything forward. We didn't become something right away. But one morning, months later, as I stood in my kitchen steeping chamomile tea, Alexander leaned against the counter and said, I don't think I'm here to heal you, Sheila. I just want to be the person beside you when peace returns. And I replied, then stay. Not because I needed someone, but because I no longer needed to guard every inch of myself. My 42nd birthday was nothing like the one that changed everything. There were no violins. No toasts. No silk dresses or sapphire bracelets. There was a warm couch, quiet jazz playing from a speaker tucked behind a stack of books, and the hum of a simmering stew on the stove. I didn't want fanfare. Just stillness. That's what healing feels like after a war. You no longer crave applause. Just peace that asks nothing from you in return. Alexander sat beside me, glasses perched low as he finished the final chapter of a novel he claimed was too beautiful to rush. I watched him quietly, not because I needed the company, but because I had learned to let it in without fear, without defenses. I was folding a linen napkin when my phone buzzed. A message. No contact name, but I didn't need one. It was Lauren. You won. But I hope you learned your lesson too. Everyone loses something in the end. I read it twice. Then again. Not because it hurt. But because I realized she still didn't get it. For Lauren, life had always been a game. A board of shifting alliances and gleaming trophies. She believed in winning, because she was too terrified to face what life looked like without a scoreboard. But me? I had lived through the silence. The sleepless nights. The apartment walls that once pressed in too tightly. I had walked into rooms full of people who pitied me, then walked out stronger every time. I had helped women rewrite their leases, men rescue their family businesses, and I had rebuilt my own identity one clear line at a time. I didn't need to win. I needed to be free. So I replied with just one sentence. I learned what you never understood, self-respect isn't something you can borrow. Then I blocked the number. I sat with that decision for a while, not because I doubted it, but because it was the final string tying me to a life that no longer belonged to me. When I rose to pour myself a glass of wine, I looked out the window at the maple trees. Their leaves were already beginning to tinge with orange. It was time. That summer, I accepted a mentorship invitation from a Portland initiative supporting young, female-led startups. I wasn't there to teach revenge. I was there to teach defense. Boundaries. Awareness. Preparation. One of my ments was Naomi, a bright, driven 26-year-old who had lost her entire investment after signing an exclusivity clause she didn't understand. Her voice trembled the first time we met. But her hands? Steady as steel. Have you ever been betrayed? She asked one day. Like so deeply that you stopped trusting anyone? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked to the corkboard behind my desk and took down a photo. It was the one from that night, Maison Fleur, just moments before everything shattered. My smile in the picture was soft, unaware, hopeful. I handed it to her. That woman trusted everyone, I said. She thought love and loyalty protected you like armor. But after that night, she learned the truth. Naomi held the photo carefully. What truth? That sometimes, what breaks you doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who knew exactly where your soft spots were. She nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of it. And I could tell, she understood. Not just the pain, but the lesson underneath. You survive betrayal not by pretending it didn't happen, but by rebuilding a life so strong it no longer fears cracks. As Naomi left that day, she looked back and said, "Thank you for not trying to fix me." "I didn't," I replied. "I just made sure you had the tools to fix yourself." Later that week, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a check. Made out to Callahan Rebuild Initiative. Signed anonymously. The amount wasn't large, but it was enough to fund 6 months of legal support for the next business owner walking into my office with more fear than hope. I framed the check, not because of what it represented, but because of what it proved. Even in the shadows of betrayal, some people choose to give back quietly. And sometimes, justice inspires more than rage, it inspires repair. I never saw Ethan again. I heard whispers, his Porsche repossessed, his name removed from the Bar Association's public directory, his remaining assets sold off during a closed-door mediation hearing. Rumor had it he moved to another city, tried to start over under a different name. But none of that mattered. He no longer lived in my head. Lauren disappeared, too. The last trace of her was a blurry photo taken at an airport in Montana. No luggage. Just a designer coat that looked borrowed, and sunglasses she didn't need at night. The power couple was gone. Not in flames. In ash. And me? I kept living. I hosted small dinners. Read books with spines cracked from overuse. Took slow walks through Laurelhurst Park and learned to make mushroom risotto from scratch. Some nights, I wrote in journals I didn't plan to publish, just for myself. Words no one would see, but that helped stitch the pieces of me together again. On the last page of my newest journal, I wrote, "I walked into my 38th birthday thinking I was the woman who had it all. I walked out thinking I'd lost everything. But the truth is, I hadn't lost myself. I had just never met the woman I was meant to become." Sheila's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about quiet resilience, sharpened clarity, and what happens when the person everyone underestimates chooses not to collapse, but to rise, smarter, stronger, and untouchable. What do you think of Sheila's journey? Did she go too far, or was it exactly what she needed to reclaim her power? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more stories where justice isn't just served, it's earned.